welcome to another episode of our Inner Sparks featured stories. I am Lily Yan, your host of this podcast and founder of our Inner Sparks Network, a network of ordinary women sharing our extraordinary stories. We all have so many inspiring women around us in our lives, our sisters, our neighbors, our friends, our mothers, our grandmothers, and our daughters. We need to acknowledge and celebrate each of these women's successes. Let's do that together. Let's use these opportunities as ways to inspire and empower each other and others. Join me to discover, embody, and share our inner sparks. This is the first episode we'll be interviewing someone who's been nominated by a previous interviewee. Dear Lily, I'm nominating my dear friend and neighbor Jennifer to be interviewed on Our Inner Sparks. Unbeknownst to her, I picked her out to be my mama partner when I moved across the street from her over 10 years ago. We both had 3 kids, all in the same school, and we took turns for school pickup, drop-off, provided emergency before school and after school. We took care of each other's homes when the others were away. We quickly became friends as we spent PD days together with our children, organized the neighborhood street parties together, volunteered, exercised, and socialized together. She had quickly became an integral part of my everyday life in the first neighborhood I lived in that I felt like home. 2 years ago, Jennifer was diagnosed with cancer. She is fit, healthy, young, energetic, and is the last person anyone would have expected to be the recipient of this life-changing diagnosis. Her diagnosis was a shock to our neighborhood and community. It sent a clear and frightening message that cancer does not discriminate. Our community rallied around her and her family. But to be honest, it was a productive distraction for the rest of us, which allowed us to feel helpful during this worrisome time. A year after her initial diagnosis, Jennifer was diagnosed again and went through her second round of treatments. What blew us away was not only her strength and tenacity to deal with her illness, it was how she inspired the rest of us to take concrete actions. Jennifer is a physiotherapist and have been researching the benefits of exercise for cancer treatment. She would make deliberate effort to work out at the gym and walk and run around the neighborhood. Witnessing this, the rest of us would come to realize that we have no excuse not to get moving ourselves. Today, she's thriving with cancer and inspiring the rest of us to live our healthiest and fullest lives. Personally, she has inspired me to take chances, travel more, to stop living in fear of disappointing others, and to live my one life with intention. She shares her personal experience and challenges through a community blog, The Urban Villager. She is a very private person, and for her to share her learning experiences and expertise on a public platform is a vulnerable and immensely generous gift she has given to her readers and now with the listeners on Our Inner Sparks. See. Now, let's get to our featured story today. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to Our Inner Sparks. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to give us an introduction of yourself? Who is Jennifer and what expertise and hobbies does Jennifer have?
I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 3 busy kids. I enjoy being active, exercising, traveling. I like experiencing new things, going new places. I trained as a physiotherapist. I worked primarily in inpatient rehabilitation with a variety of different clientele. Inpatient rehabilitation basically means somebody who is hospitalized and is not ready to return home and need a period of reactivation before being ready to leave hospital. And I'm also living with cancer. So that's kind of where my journey starts.
Yeah, as we mentioned in the introduction, through Cecilia's nomination, you've been
sharing some of this journey in a community called Urban Villagers. We wanted to bring you to this platform as well, because I think a lot of messages that you sent in those articles and blogs are very valuable, not to just people who are living with cancer, but really anyone at all to stay active, right? So we're very thankful that you're willing to sit down with us today and sharing your experience. Can you tell us a little bit about this journey of you living with cancer?
So I was diagnosed just over 2 years ago with stage 2B cervical cancer. So the initial phase of treatment was intensive radiation accompanied with chemotherapy. So that basically was every day, 5 days a week, a trip downtown for a radiation session, and once a week, chemotherapy. And this went on for essentially 8 weeks of treatment. So I got quite sick. Radiation makes people very, very fatigued. It also gave me a lot of nausea based on where the radiation was being delivered. So I was very weak. I lost a lot of weight. I lost 25 pounds, which for me was a significant percentage of my body weight. I was very weak and deconditioned by the time I finished my treatments. At that point, I recognized that I needed to build myself back up slowly.
With your previous experience in physiotherapy, and specifically in rehabilitation, were there things that in your in-depth expertise that you had that made a difference in this journey for you? When you had that diagnosis, from which point you started to think, oh, wow, you know what, I can do some of the things that I used to do for the patients I treated?
When I was actively sick, I was actually just too overwhelmed by the diagnosis and the treatments and the side effects to really think as a physio. I probably missed an opportunity to do more during that active stage, but the focus was more on just getting through treatments than exploring anything. But when I finished my treatments and, immediately the instinct to feel like I needed to be back at work, the minute my treatments were over, I recognized that I was too frail to return to work, and I saw myself really mirroring what my patients would look like. My biggest joke was the baggy yoga pants. I'd lost so much weight that my yoga pants were actually baggy. That is kind of how my patients would look. They didn't fit into their clothes properly because they also had lost so much weight on their journeys in hospital. And so that's when it kicked in that, wait a minute, I need rehab. And I started researching more specifically because as a physio, I recognized that I needed to build up my strength. I needed to build muscle mass. I needed to work on my cardio. I needed to, start slow and build up to my tolerance. And I certainly recognized all that. But when I went to school, did not learn a lot specifically about cancer patients and exercise. It was more focused around managing surgical side effects, things like that. But the more I researched about the role of exercise in recovering from cancer, the more information, new information and relatively current information that I was digging up, and realizing that this whole field of what we call exercise oncology is actually in a really actively developing phase right now, which became really exciting to continue to look into. So I became quite passionate about exploring the positive effects of exercise really at all stages of the cancer journey.
Right. And I have to agree with you. When you are actively sick, you kind of are preoccupied with just the day-to-day routines. And that's a significant amount of energy already. And totally understand what you mean by, at that point, it would be great if you started some type of activities. Maybe it would be better. But I think it would be so difficult when you had that moment in a break of the treatment. Once the treatment's completed, you realize that immediately and then dig right into the researching. And it sounds like very exciting things that you're finding and also then exploring with yourself, right? It sounds like you were able to utilize a lot of those research and put it in your daily routine. With that said, what changes did you make in your daily routine to incorporate what you called exercise oncology?
Looking at how much activity I did in a day, the initial guidelines really are for how much activity to do, really mirror what all healthy adults should be doing, which is at least 150 minutes of cardio activities every week and 2 sessions of resistance training or exercises where you're using your muscles to try to strengthen your muscles. I started with that goal. And now certainly when you start from a weakened position, you're not going to jump right in that full amount of activity. You're going to need to start slow and build your way up. But I was able to do that. I started initially taking walks and doing yoga and doing the weight training because I could start with lighter weights and work my way up. And then as I started to feel better, I added in more cardio to my routine, and to the point where I was, able to tolerate a regular routine that, would be equivalent to what my healthy friends are able to sustain.
That's amazing. It sounds like you were very methodical. You knew exactly what you were aiming for the end state, ideal state of the activities. But then you were looking at ramping that up, and it sounds like, very programmatic, which is great. But I think from somebody who maybe don't have so much experience, what would your recommendation be so that they eliminate or reduce that kind of you feel better and you do more and you exhaust yourself, and that back and forth a little bit on that recovery?
I guess if you're a healthy person, or even recovering once an illness has finished, for sure you need to listen to your body and recognize when you're doing too much. So exercise should energize you. You might feel fatigued, but you should feel better for having done it. If you are to the point that you are feeling very run down following the exercise would mean, once you've had a reasonable recovery time of, an hour or two to recover from the exertion of it. But, within an hour or so, and even the next day, you should feel like you have energy. There's more at play as far as nutrition and, hydration, things like that also need to be taken into account. I'm not an expert, so I don't want to give suggestions here, but, it's important to be well hydrated and to eat well in order to sustain, to have the energy. But, if you are overdoing it, then you will feel run down and tired, and you will feel worse for having done the exercise. Now, muscle strengthening, if you are doing it well, it will give you initially some late onset muscle soreness,
Yes.
so that next day soreness and stiffness. And there are things you can do, like a warm bath right after exercising. You can stretch, use rollers, light cardio to flush the toxins around. There are things you can do, but if you are working your muscles to fatigue, like you need to do in order to strengthen, there is going to be some muscle soreness. And it does get better with time. So the more your muscles are used to exercising, the more frequently you do it, then the faster you will recover from it. But that's kind of hard to escape.
Right. That initial, yeah. I think you're totally right. Like this is not just applicable for people who are recovering from anything. This is for anybody who wants to get into an exercise routine, right? Who's a healthy person, who, feel like they want to add some more activities in their life. There's a lot of the initial ramping up that they should probably be aware as well, right? I was going to originally ask, why do you believe that staying active is so important? And I think, you mentioned it, and maybe we can extend on that a little bit. You mentioned that being active will give you more energy. Why do you think being active, whether you're a healthy person or that you're recovering from something, why is it so important?
Being physically active, meeting some of the activity guidelines it is really part of a healthy lifestyle and healthy aging. Obviously, this goes along with diet and managing stress, but there's tons of support in the literature, in scientific literature, for exercise being a really important factor for not just staying healthy, but also managing chronic medical conditions, whether it be a diabetes, heart disease, mental health, preventing or improving osteoporosis, preventing falls as people age, or even recovering from injuries. So it's there's proven strategies to use exercise for specific medical conditions.
Like you said, there's different protocols. I like the fact that you brought up the mental aspect, because a lot of times, even I'm talking about healthy people, the mental part of it is a big deal. When you are getting into that exercise routine, you almost need to get over this hurdle that you got to start doing this regularly. And once you get to that, mentally, you want to do it. You want to continue because it made you feel better. And it's almost like if you don't feed yourself that, you actually feel sad and not content. And that's not just from a physical perspective, because if you miss one day, physically, you're probably not going to feel that much once you get onto that routine. But mentally, it makes a big difference. So I find, I'm glad you brought that up. Staying active is really great for both the physical and the mental aspects.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. You share your journey on this community called Urban Villager. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with that and what your experience has been like sharing your story?
Yeah, so Urban Villager is fairly young. I agreed to participate mostly as a favor to my friend, more than my desire to really share my story. But I have found that sitting down and writing about my experience was actually quite therapeutic. I'm not really a journaler, but I think a lot of people have suggested how journaling is a really good way of managing emotions and dealing with stress and things like that. And I did see that taking the time to sit down and write things out and look critically at my situation was actually quite helpful. And then once it was down on paper, it was much easier to kind of close the book on it and move on and not dwell on it. So it was very much a therapeutic experience of actually writing. I'm a very private, introverted person, so it was very intimidating for me to put my story out there.
Right.
I'm not really sure what kind of bad thing I was expecting to happen to me by doing that, but I felt very exposed. Nothing major has come out of it other than really just personal experience. So I'm not sure why I was so scared about it. And I guess that experience is what gave me the courage to accept your invitation to talk to you about my journey. In my mind, the universe keeps giving me these opportunities to share the story. So I guess it's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, we totally appreciate it. It's understandable. Like, it's scary to put yourself out there, being vulnerable and open about your situation, and then having so many people that you may or may not know. I mean, in this case, there's probably going to be lots of people you'll never know and you'll never meet will hear the story. But I think the value here is the story that you are providing. And I think, as Cecilia indicated in her nomination letter, is that the story that you're sharing has inspired her and others in your community to become more active. And I think that's the purpose here too, is really sharing that out there and saying, no matter what state of health you're in, you can still be active in the way that you can, right? And do the best to stay active, because that really is a very important and critical part of being well. Planning it out, thinking about, this is my ideal state of activity, and how do I program, the ramp up so that it's not so hard on my body. And so no matter what part of the journey you're on, this is really, truly helpful and inspiring to anyone to really just stay active.
I was also hoping to use the platform of Urban Villager as a way to promote exercise specifically for the cancer patient, because while it's more well known how exercise is effective for example, somebody with with diabetes as a way to manage their weight and blood sugars and medications. It's not so widely viewed right now how much exercise can help somebody with cancer. And so it was also being able to use the blog as a way to help communicate that message that the therapeutic and medical community is trying to spread to the public. So since I have not yet been able to return to my job as a physiotherapist at the hospital, this kind of gave me a way to keep myself active, to keep myself kind of thinking like a physiotherapist.
Yeah, and developing your profession, continue to develop. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, this exercise oncology field is quite new. It sounds like it's, like you said, current, new, and developing as it's going, based on some past personal experiences. We dealt with some cancer in our own family, and it's difficult. You see that they don't have energy and you just want them to give them rest and really not knowing how to support. And I think that this knowledge is really good for people who are actually supporting people going through cancer, because then maybe that's something they can help them in that journey to become more active and stay active while living with cancer. So I think it's all around really great that you're able to share this and really help others. You mentioned, and I wanted to kind of pull that out of one of the articles, you mentioned something around drug-free way to manage your treatment. And, I think through the article, it's understood that it's not the chemo itself, it's really afterwards, dealing with the symptoms from the chemo and the treatments, and then how do you then maintain your health through being active in a drug-free way. Would you like to share that a little bit with us?
After my initial treatment and I began my recovery, I was actually diagnosed with a recurrence. And that's when I started taking a different kind of chemotherapy every 3 weeks. So this chemotherapy that I started taking, it created a lot of side effects. Like I had very bad bone pains and I experienced pins and needles feelings in my legs and a little bit in my hands as the major side effects, along with some general fatigue. And that's very cyclical. It kind of comes on a few days after the chemotherapy and lasts for a few days. What I found was that when I went to my doctor, my doctor is very supportive, but the usual suggestion for managing these side effects would be pain medication. And pain medication comes with its own side effects, which are also very uncomfortable. I had learned through my research in exercise oncology that exercise can be quite effective in dealing with these side effects. So I need to make a bit of a distinction that I'm not advocating for people to not use pain medication, but I found that I could avoid taking additional medications and causing myself additional issues like constipation, because getting out and getting active actually made my bone pains and my pins and needles improve. And so it was, as I wrote in one of my articles, it's a very difficult stage to be able to get out and get active because you are feeling so crummy. But knowing that it would help me, it was quite empowering to feel like I had control over something and be able to say that I will try to exercise a little bit, and feeling the improvement and realizing that I was actually able to help myself by going out and getting mobile. And so I did not need to use any additional pain medications in order to manage these symptoms. Now, I also have pain, which is more inflammatory. And for that pain, I do require pain medication because activity does aggravate inflammation. And so that's where it's important to listen to your body and recognize the difference. And that's where you might, if you are dealing with a chronic illness, an acute illness, if you are, if you are struggling with something different and trying to get active, you might require the assistance of your doctor, of a physiotherapist, or another exercise professional in order to help you distinguish between which exercises you should be doing, which ones will help you, which ones will harm you. So, and as a physio, I'm able to do that mostly for myself. But I guess the message would be that you don't always have to wait until you have recovered before you begin your activity. So
Right.
I was going through the treatment of chemotherapy, and I had days that I was feeling very poorly. There were still things I could do on those days. I might need to modify, might need to do less, or pick and choose which exercises I participated in, but there were still things that I could do for myself.
Right.
And then as I felt better, I could ramp up and get back to a regular routine. And the more you do, the more you recognize what helps you.
I really like what you said about the empowering part. Staying active, doing something for yourself makes you feel that you're empowered in a situation you don't feel like you have a lot of control over, right? So I commend you for doing this because it's hard. I really do think it's hard for people who are healthy and who just are struggling with illness that's nowhere near the severity of what you're talking about. It's still hard, right? So mentally, you seem very disciplined, and I'm gonna bring that up. And I wonder if you can maybe even pinpoint a few characteristics about yourself that made a difference in that journey for you, because I feel like you seem to be somebody who want to or will take control, and like you said, do what you can on your own. And what else? Like, what else do you think that's made a difference for you in your journey that has kept you active despite of all the things that you feel?
Well, I'm a pretty self-reliant, independent, and rather stoic. So the bad side of that is it makes it difficult for me to ask for other people to help me. But just that idea that I need to help myself. I push through when it's difficult. Giving up is not an option. I don't typically look for the easy way out. I just usually just plow ahead and do the best I can.
Right.
I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best way of attacking everything, but that's typically the way that I faced it. I think the goal that I had in participating in exercise was very personal. So I mean, I wasn't exercising to lose weight or to have a particular body shape. I was exercising because I was convinced that participating in this exercise gave me potential to improve my response to treatment. It really was for me a tool in battling cancer, and it remains that way. That I motivate myself by saying, what can I do for myself right now? I can do some exercise. When the going gets tough, it's like, well, if it means, I can be tough if it means attacking cancer. So it's a source of motivation in itself.
Right, absolutely. So you are amazing, just from what you just said. It's very inspiring, right? Keeping up with all the things and staying active and gaining overall wellness in this whatever situation you're in, right? You're obviously kind of equipped with a lot of expertise and your ability to research in that field. A lot of people don't. They may not have the initial understanding of the physiology and how the body works and how exercise can help them. They may not understand even just the research itself, what it actually is telling the people that could potentially use it. What would you suggest to people who actually don't have any of those background or ability to do research at this point? What would you suggest them to kind of do to start their own journey for staying active?
I mean, there are resources out there for the general public. There's actually just recently, within the last few months, there were some publications by some of the top researchers in the field directed at the public, at physicians working with people with cancer. So there are resources out there. There are also community-based programs specifically for people with cancer. It's out there. It's getting everybody aware that it's there, because very often you need to advocate for yourself. So, going to your doctor and asking about exercise programs, looking online, looking at the resources at the hospital. And there are things out there, because the more unfamiliar it is to you, the more you should seek guidance in your initial participation until you're more aware. So
Right.
depending on what community you live in will sort of depend on where what resources are available to you. But definitely, a simple Google search of what's available in your neighborhood actually will pull up physiotherapy clinics or community-based exercise groups through community centers or through not-for-profit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's out
Yeah,
there.
I like what you said. Advocate for yourself. Talk to the physicians, get the support that you need, right? Like seek
Absolutely.
for that. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna get into a segment called In Search of True Fulfillment. In this segment, we have 3 questions, each of them, if you would answer in a short sentence or 10 words. What does success mean to Jennifer?
So I recognized that in having to stop work for this illness, that really the most important thing to me, my most important job, is supporting my family. So for me, success really comes from seeing my children grow into independent thinkers, making good decisions, learning life lessons. That I get a lot of satisfaction from seeing that. It has a lot less to do with my professional life, much more to do with my personal life.
So how do you define happiness?
To me, happiness really is that state of being, of feeling calm and balanced. But I've recognized that happiness is something that you have to actively look for and recognize. Being grateful for what you have and what you're experiencing. Looking for all of and acknowledging all of the positive things that happen in our life. You don't wait for happiness to come to you. You've got to recognize when it's there.
Oh, I love that, actually. Because I think so many of us are so busy in our lives and we kind of just plow through it and not recognizing that there's plenty of things that are making us happy. And by recognizing that, you feel fulfilled and grateful and
Exactly.
appreciate what you have, right? I love that. So what do you say is one thing that everyone should take away from your story so that it would ignite and harvest their own inner sparks?
My main message would be to incorporate activity into your life, regardless of whether you're healthy or dealing with illness. Benefits of exercise are there. The most important thing is to take the first step and to just get started. I've learned so many things on my journey. Another thing that I've learned is just to go take that first step and do something anyway, especially if it scares you to do it. I know a lot of people are intimidated about beginning on a new journey. So try it, just start and see where it takes you.
You brought it up earlier, how this experience of sharing was scary to you. Taking that step is, sometimes it's really just taking that step and see where it goes. Like you said, sharing it made you feel better because it gave you some therapeutic benefits. So, a lot of times is really taking that first step. That's well said. What do you look forward to right now?
I think my children are in significant phases of their lives. They're in sort of some major transition years. So I look forward to seeing where their paths are going to take them. Through this journey, I am learning and trying to be more present in the moment. And instead of trying to live in the future, I'm trying to live more in the now, because we don't know what the future will hold. And we can see some of the tragedies that have happened recently that in the news and realize that our future can change at any moment. And I really don't have any control over what my future has. So looking forward all the time can be discouraging. And so trying to think about living in the moment and living in the now and being grateful for what I have right now. That's my
Yeah,
advice.
that's wonderful. Well said. And like you said, anything could happen, and there's no discrimination when your time comes. Sometimes it just happens, regardless of how much money you may have, or how much health you may have, or how much whatever else you may have. Sometimes accidents could even happen, right? So you don't have control over those kind of things. But what you do have control is how you deal with the things that are coming at you, and your attitude and how you view the world. Staying the present, being grateful, all really great suggestions for everybody. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Jennifer. I want to thank you for inspiring me to stay active through my recent health issues. And, reading your articles had really encouraged me to get moving, right? And not just continue to let the illness take its own shape. I'm having some control over how I feel every day through staying active. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much. You're truly very inspirational, and we appreciate your bravery and candidness in sharing your story with us, and inspiring all of us to stay active. So I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your thoughts on this episode is encouraged on all our social media sites, which are listed in the podcast description. If you have any feedback on this podcast, the social media sites, and this network as a whole, please feel free to email me at ourinnersparks@gmail.com. Should you or someone in your life have an inspiring story you would like to see shared in our network, please feel free to email me with a nomination for future features. Thank you for listening to this episode of Our Inner Sparks Featured Stories.